Hey y'all, Ryan Sprague here. As you all know, the Somewhere in the Skies podcast is always free to consume, but it isn't free to create. That's why I've started the Somewhere in the Skies Patreon campaign. On a monthly basis, you give what you think the show is worth. You'll be helping the show continue, grow, and to be something truly communal. And remember, there are rewards for each level of contribution, and the list is only growing. So please, help Somewhere in the Skies now by becoming a patron. To contribute and to learn more, visit www.patreon.com/somewhereskies. Thank you for your support. And now, on with the show.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Scathing indictment.
Scathing.
Okay.
Behind the scenes, what we really think of you.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, I'm going to push record.
It's official.
I want to try to make this all professional, but I can't because it's Shannon. For anyone listening, we've been speaking for about half an hour, and that half an hour will probably never see the light of day, but maybe
Let's hope
to
not.
our Patreon subscribers and the insiders, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
for those who have been following my journey on the first, 50 episodes maybe of Into the Fray, or you've been following her work since the beginning, you know who this person is, Shannon LeGro, host of Into the Fray Radio, and she has stepped further down the rabbit hole and into a new book project called Beyond the Fray, which we will be discussing today among many other interesting topics. So Shannon, thank you so much for coming on Somewhere in the Skies again.
Sir, thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for inviting me on.
My pleasure. I've got a nice little bourbon here to cheers to you on your first book.
Thank you very much.
How does it feel?
Like I said before, we hit the old record button here. I always kind of almost bragged about how I'd never have a book out, and here we are. It's seen the light of day. No, it's a wonderful feeling, and I have a wonderful partner in the whole thing. G. Michael Hoff. First name Jeff. He's been wonderful through this whole thing, and he's the one that he really initiated the contact between the two of us, and look where it's led us. So no, thank you, Ryan.
Of course, yeah, that led you to Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But I want to talk first. The last time we spoke was right before Storm Area 51. That shit came and went. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how it went. I know you live out in the Nevada area where this all took place. So were you able to make it out there, or have you heard any rumblings about how it all went down? Like, what was going on out there, Shane?
The only regret I have is the fact that George Knapp himself actually went out to the Storm Area 51.
Of course he did.
And he was doing his reporting as well he should.
Yeah.
He's definitely on the pulse of all of this stuff. And that's my only regret. Other than that, it was quite the dud. I mean, what was the number, the initial number of people saying, I'm going to storm Area 51?
I think it was
what was that number?
3 million or something like that. Yeah.
It was like 80 kids in pretty much EDC outfits and like EDC is Electric Daisy Carnival, which I will never be caught dead at one of those, by the way. God bless you all, but no. The tutus and the socks up to the thing, like you're going to CrossFit, but you're definitely not going to work out. It's no. But yeah, Storm Area 51 didn't quite turn out the way they hoped. Thankfully, no one even went up and touched the gate, as far as I know, which is, was a federal offense.
Right.
Or is that not what happened?
No, you're correct that one person was arrested. I heard.
Wait, what did he do,
grapevine.
or she did?
It was a she, and she was 87 years old.
What?
She pissed on the gate. This is what I heard. I could be, maybe this is a rumor, but I heard that an 87-year-old woman went up to the gate, peed on it, and they had to restrain her.
What's the logistics on that? Did she climb on the gate? Because the gate's kind of high. It's like chest high.
Right,
Did she sit on the pillar.
I do
It has-
wonder. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a logistics person, so I'm kind of
as you should be.
She doesn't need a citation for that or to go to Alamo jail. She needs a little mill. You pissed on the gate. I mean, she didn't touch it. If she didn't touch it, well, fine.
Right. I think she's the hero in all this, not Maddie Roberts. Come on.
That is wonderful. How did I miss that story?
Yeah, I might have come across it at 3 a.m. after a couple too many drinks, but that was about the extent of what I heard went on out there. But
Yeah.
I know Jeremy Corbell had an event. Maddie Roberts had his own event. There was another one going on in a town over. So, like, even before this thing came to be, like, it was already, like, broken to begin with. So, I don't know. You know, maybe it'll become a new thing every year. If that's the case, I know Maddie Roberts, the guy who started the Facebook group, he's now going to make this an annual event. It's going to be, like, a big concert thing, and money's going to go to charities. So, you know what? If that's what this turns out to be, I'm all for it. I said from the beginning, like, if we could focus our energy on good things instead of, like, you know, making money off of people and selling $15 Bud Lights with an alien on the front, like, at least get that money to go to something good. So, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next year? But Storm Area 51 wasn't so much a storm, I would say.
Did there was rumors that they did have a stage because I saw it behind George. Did people like Paul Oakenfold actually play out there?
I think so. I mean, there were some musical.
Where'd the money come from for that to pay him?
You got me. Who knows? Wow. Maybe the government paid for it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole thing was organized by Area 51. Whoa, what about that, guys?
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know why they would want to deal with 87-year-olds pissing on their gate, but hey, maybe they just didn't see that one coming. I mean, who would? That's amazing.
Who would? Yeah, she caught him by surprise, and that's what you got to do out there. They've seen everything.
Like, you got a copy? Yeah, we got Hilda out here. She is pissing on the gate, lifted her tutu. Again. Hilda, again? Oh. Meanwhile, she lives out there, you know? Yep. She's like, I'm here every day. What's a Storm Area 51 crap? No, I will admit, though, I went out, and it was just my local grocery store. Yes, people, we do have grocery stores here in Las Vegas. What?
In New York City, too, people don't think we grocery shop. We do.
Do you do you always catch cockroaches the size of cats every single day since you're in New York City?
Of course. You
keep it is it leash trained?
Yeah. Yes. You do need a leash. It's a law here in New York.
Leash trained roaches.
But no, so we got grocery stores.
Yeah, it's weird, right? You actually like eat there and like cook there and like go to school there. Anyhow, I did. I went to my local grocery store and bought one of those cases of the cans of Bud with the aliens on it. So I proudly kept a few of those.
That's
in
awesome.
The box, of course. Just had to because I was like, well, they never make these again. I should probably do this. And it's funny because I posted a picture and people are like, I will give you $100 right now for that.
Yeah. Like that stuff's going to be it's going to be like those people who sell Surge soda cans online now for like, $2,000 or something.
Well, if I really get hard up, I know what I'm selling first. I got to tell you.
A lot has happened since our last conversation. You went on the road to hunt UFOs. You wrote and published a book, and you're taking the book to many different levels. We're going to cover all of that, but I'd love to start a little with the book itself, Beyond the Fray, Bigfoot. How did this book come about? And you mentioned the other author and person who got involved. How did this all happen?
So, the nice thing about having a podcast is the content is already there. It's in a very different form, obviously, but people trust you enough to come on and they tell sometimes a story that they've not even told their spouse or their parents, if they were little, or if they told their parents kind of brushed them off, which we've all had that experience, right? As far as our own paranormal stories. And it's always kind of been there. I will admit that I have thought about it before, but as jokingly mentioned, but not really jokingly, it just wasn't really in the cards for me to write a book solo. And Jeff emailed me, and I gravitated towards him right away. He's a wonderful writer. He is a fictional writer. And that is to say, this Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, nor will the others be fictional works. These are strictly taken right from the witness's mouth and transferred onto paper in a way that is proper for reading form. And, he knows what he's doing. He's a wonderful writer. And between the two of us, we chose some stories. And obviously we had these people's permission before they got put into the book. And, his fictional background, he was straight out. He's like, hey, I write Westerns and I write post-apocalyptic fiction. And he is a fantastic writer, you guys. And I was telling Ryan, just go check him out on Amazon. G. Michael Hoff, Hopf. And that is, you can find him online as well, gmichaelhoff.com. But he's a best-selling author. And
he is prolific. I mean, when I looked him up, I was like, whoa,
yes.
Where's this guy been my whole life?
Yeah. And, his books he goes down, it's got to be so much harder to do, but he has a series of books that'll follow this line and this storyline with these characters. And, talk about character development is taking a character from a book 1 to book 3 or 4. I mean, that's just, you have to have a talent. So anyhow, I teamed up with him. And we chose these stories. Now, it's not all 100% Bigfoot. We did put in a few Dogman stories. So, the title may be slightly misleading, but it is mostly a Bigfoot book, all taken from my show. But the caveat to that is there are several in there that were never aired on my show because they were not comfortable enough to even do that. But, they got in touch, and it is in the book. And these stories, I will say, are some of my favorites. And it's probably really going to sound hokey to say this because it's my book. But even though I've heard these stories firsthand, they're basically, not my stories, but I'm saying they're from my show. I have heard them, as you know. You record, you edit, you've heard them again through whatever means, it happened to come up. I will say that even reading them, it got me again. It kind of got me for some of these, especially some of the ones that are more the nail biters, and they're all kind of on the edge of that. It'll get you. And some of the reviews so far are fantastic, guys. And thank you so much for that. And Ryan knows, and we harp this to death, even for just our podcast. But my goodness, if you guys have, read either one of our books, you guys have no idea how much the reviews on Amazon help us out. So if you could take those few moments and leave that review, but, saying, oh, I had to keep the lights on. I read, the book, Shannon and Jeff's book, and I had to keep the lights on, really freaked me out. Or I was sitting in a parking lot and I was locking my doors. I'm like, this is fantastic. That is what we were going for. And so far, it's worked really well.
You're so right, Shannon. The stories, they never leave you. And no matter how many times you hear them, that's the same with my witness account episodes that I do of my show where, people call in and tell their stories. And when you're editing, that's like one thing. You're trying to make it sound rhythmic or, clean it up or do this. But when you really sit down and listen to the stories from the voice of the people experiencing it, it brings it to a whole other level. Like nothing you could write or I could write would ever convey what they truly want to say. So the fact that a lot of these stories in your book come directly from the witnesses, that's rare, and that's something you don't get that often. So I was so happy to see that's the way the book was structured. And there were a few that really stuck out to me. And the first one that really got to me was a story titled The Cries of a Baby.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Would you mind maybe running us through this one a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will happily run through this one.
Okay.
Now, this is one of the stories that never aired on my show. I do believe that Derek has probably told it on other shows, but it was not verbally told on Into the Fray. So, if you guys are considering going out solo to Bigfoot, you might change your mind. So Derek Randalls is, and I've met him in person, fantastic human being. All of the Olympic Project crew, Shane Corson, David Ellis, he's the audio guy that you guys hear a lot of times that will play these clips that he has cleaned up. And nobody does a better job than David Ellis at that. But that is the Olympic Project in Washington State. So Derek Randall's. And so this is basically after he's really caught the bug. He caught the bug in 85, and that was a sighting that he had. But what's funny is that's not what this story is, and somehow it will still creep you out. So this encounter occurs in the late 90s, and he admits that, hey, I've got the Bigfoot bug. I'm going to talk to whoever I can. I want to talk to the big guys. And he finds one of the biggest and brightest stars in Bigfootery, and that is the renowned Grover Krantz. And Derek goes, I like to say that he invited me over, but I'm pretty sure that I kind of invited myself over to Grover's house, which who wouldn't, right? So he goes over, and they're just bullshitting about Bigfoot and the ins and outs of it. And he's just like, so, I mean, where would you go, Grover, for the best place to see a Bigfoots? And he goes, McCall, Idaho. And he's like, wait, McCall, Idaho for a Bigfoot? What? So he's so intrigued by this. He's like, okay, I'll bite. So McCall, Idaho. Great. So what about, calling one in? Like what tactic would you use to quote unquote call in a Bigfoot? And Grover replies, I would play the recording of a baby crying. And Derek's like, oh, okay, cool. Awesome. And lo and behold, guess what? They have a new baby at home. So he goes home and he proceeds to record his son crying for any amount of time, whatever it was, because then, and this is probably back in the day of a cassette, right? Like a lot of you guys out there may not know what that is, but you youngins, I still have my Vanilla Ice cassette downstairs. You can hate on me all you want. Ride that train, Ice Ice Baby. Yeah. I don't play it. I have no way to play it.
Go, Ninja, go, Ninja, go.
Yeah, there's just nothing like cassette tape. I have no way to play it, but I'll never get rid of it. Anyhow,
Sorry.
he recorded. Sorry, no, my fault. No reason to bring up Vanilla Ice, but I did. There you go. This is what happens. This is exactly what would happen on our intros for Into the Fray.
Yep, it was bound to make it into an episode.
Yeah. So he records his son crying. And he does, in fact, go out to Idaho. He goes to, I believe it was Burnt Fork in the Blue Mountains. And, okay, now, let me set the tone for Derek. Derek is a complete badass, and he still is to this day. He's built very well. He's very fit. He goes out hiking, I'm talking 4 hours and hours by himself, still to this day. And he did on this day. And he goes out for 6 hours by himself. And he hikes for 6 hours in one direction. And it's starting to get late, so he finds a large tree with a pretty good vantage point. And he's basically, he's looking out over, not a ravine per se, but, an open area, and then it dips into like a creek area. And he does, in fact, have like a night shot camera. It's got like a Gen 3 night vision monocular, which they're so bad at the bone. If you can ever play with a monocular, guys, amazing. Just a little side note here, when you're out quote unquote Bigfooting, raccoons and deer, and even if there happens to be a bird up that late for some reason, or a squirrel, they sound like a damn 8 foot tall, whatever the hell, when they're going through the underbrush if it's dry. Wow. So if you have something like a monocular, it's very advantageous for you, because you immediately go, well, that's just a fat little raccoon over there.
Could you imagine if like something heavier? Yeah.
Yeah. And not to say that people can't differentiate if a 10 foot tall creature is thumping through the woods. I'm just saying that little things can sound very, very big sometimes. Right. So that's a great way to do that. If you can afford one, it's definitely the way to go. That being said, I don't have one, but of course I'm back in Nevada. So there you go. Not really much of a reason right now. So anyhow, it finally gets dark out, and I think he actually says it's pitch black out. He hits play on this looped recording of his son crying. And he does, in fact, admit after about an hour, he gets a headache. Big shocker there, right? And more time passes. And he's actually considering shutting off because there's absolutely nothing happening. And it's funny because there's always the timing of things. And as he's thinking about shutting it off, he hears a very loud crash from the opposite side of where he's sitting. And the smart thing about Derek, he goes out by himself, which a lot of people are like, well, that's not smart. Okay, but if you met Derek, you'd probably understand a little better why he's okay doing that. But he also does go out armed because, let's face it, it's probably not for the Bigfoots. It's for the cougars or the psychotic people that you may run into. Micah Hanks has a great story about running into a real freak in the woods, a human being, which will always stick with me, the man in the overalls. But he does, in fact, take his pistol out, just in case. And 5 minutes later, this thing is still like crashing around, just making a ruckus. And he can tell it's really, really big. And the unfortunate thing is it's making its way towards him. And the baby cries are still going. He hasn't stopped those going quite yet. And he's starting to wonder if it's such a good idea to be doing this. This is when it dawns on him. He's totally alone. Yes, he has a firearm. But how many times have we heard people go, once I saw it, the firearm I was holding would have done nothing but piss it off.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact gauge of what he was carrying, but I can almost guarantee you he'd probably say the same thing. So he actually has the foresight to ready the camera because it does have a record feature on it with the pistol in the other hand. And the crashing's getting louder and louder. And he's getting more and more scared and realizing it's a bad idea, especially when he can hear that it is on 2 feet. Mm. And he knows for sure this is not an ungulate or anything on 4 feet. It is on 2. And I think at this point he's describing it as it's like a linebacker running through the woods, which would be horrifying if you're out in the dark and you're by yourself. Mm-hmm. So he loses his nerve. He shuts the recorder completely off, and the crashing stops. Absolutely interesting. And if you wanted, I could go into a story after this that coincides with this very thing. But yeah, the crashing stops, which I have a story of myself, but the crashing stops instantly the second he starts the recorder off. And now it really, really gets scary for Derek because all he hears is extremely deep, heavy, raspy breathing. And he estimates, this is bad, he estimates it was probably only about 60 feet from him and whatever this was. Now, keep in mind, he cannot see it. It hasn't actually come through that last part of the wood line across from this ravine that he's in, mm-hmm. or on top of. I apologize. So he's listening to this breathing, and, having this part come from Derek, it was kind of sad and it bummed me out, but at the same time, I completely got it. But he said the second that he heard the breathing and he realized what situation he was in, he was completely done with research at that point. Mm. He was like, I'm out. I'm done. This is bullshit. It's too much. I mean, it's one of those be careful what you ask for things, right?
Right.
So 3 or 4 minutes, I think, or maybe up to 5 minutes, this breathing's going on, which is a really, really, really long time.
Oh, yeah.
You know
felt
that.
like hours for him,
yeah,
too.
We both had sightings that lasted 5 to whatever seconds.
Yep.
That seemed long enough.
Yeah.
3 or 4 minutes is a damn eternity. And now the breathing completely just stops. Okay? And it's silent. And he admits, like, this is almost worse. Because where the hell is it?
Where'd it go?
Because now
yeah.
there's no clue. And how it gets that quiet, he doesn't even know. So he waits for a while, and a while turns into morning. And he admits he wakes up, and the birds are chirping, the sun is shining, and he didn't have any of the feelings and the anxiety that he had the night before. Like, he felt like he was safe, and it was probably gone. And he did go over to where his best estimate of, which it wasn't that far, so it was pretty good estimation of where this thing would have been standing. And sure enough, there are 2 extremely large impressions. And a large game trail through the brush leading to that
wow.
spot. So, to him, he's going, okay, so yeah, that totally happened. And what I thought it was is probably exactly what that was. So he, now keep in mind, he's still 6 to 8 hours from where he's supposed to be to his truck to get out of there. But he makes it out. He says no other encounters, no other sign, nothing happened, no creepy feelings. But I think, and this is so cool that Derek said this, because I've heard him tell this story in person, of course. He goes, it was just so disrespectful what I did. I played the sound of a baby crying, and obviously it upset this thing so much that it comes rushing down.
Right.
Now, goodness knows what was going through this thing's mind. We don't want to put any, human emotions or anything on a Bigfoot. We don't know for sure. But it is suspect that you stop the crying, it stops. And now he's, it was that raspy, heavy breathing because he knows how stressed out he made it. So for him, now, thankfully, obviously, Derek didn't stop researching. Obviously, he's still doing it to this day and had other encounters. But for him to go, that was so messed up what I did to that Bigfoot that day. And it makes you wonder, as far as the impressions go, from what I've heard him like in person tell me, it sounded like it was a male, but you would think it was a female carrying why is a baby crying, but it could have been
almost like it was concerned for the child, like
absolutely
nurturing sort of thing.
Yeah. He's like, what if I wouldn't have shut that off and it came through and saw me, what would have happened?
Oh my God.
I mean, would I even be here? Yeah, I mean, that's one of the on the no list. I have my no list, and I'm like, that's no. I mean, but that's the power of it because he didn't see anything.
Right. Which is almost scarier.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. And there's the other thing too, right? Because you're thinking of, and we've heard reports, which sounds astonishing. And people say this, but take a tape measure, guys, and go in. I've done it before. Early on my days of Sasquatch Chronicles, we had someone come on and go, excuse me, yeah, I saw a 10-foot tall, like 10 feet. Oh, that's tall. No. Get a tape measure. Take it from the floor up to 10 feet. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Talk about shitting your pants. I mean, if any of them do get that big, which why couldn't they if they get 8 feet tall? I mean, because look at human beings. Right. Again, not to put anamorphic qualities on the Bigfoot, but there's that, we've got the very, very tall human beings. If you ever saw something that big, that's why it's so important that these people actually agree to come forward. They talk to you, they talk to me, they talk to Jim or Micah or whoever it is. It changed their lives.
Absolutely.
It changed everything. And some of these people have never gone in the woods again. There's another great story from the book where he saw the Bigfoot holding something. Mm-hmm. And what the Bigfoot was holding was enough for him to go, oh, hell no. They have, there are other things going on out there. And yeah, they have to eat, right? I mean, what can you say to that? So anyway, that is Derek's story. And if that doesn't allay any fears as to, gee, I mean, should I go out, 8 hours?
Yeah, that would be enough for me to not want to do it again. You said you have a story too that's kind of connected to this. Are you willing to share that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm sure that some of the phrases, which, I think you coined that term, didn't you?
TM, right? Baby. That's all mine. I'm getting that coin every time someone says it.
That's Rilos, guys. Okay? Phrasey is Rilos.
That's like that dude who tried to copyright Secret Space Program. Come on, dude.
What? I never heard about that.
It is an actual thing. A guy tried to coin or copyright the term Secret Space Program. Anyways, we don't want to give him any airtime. So
no, that's just painful, silly, dumb.
It is, yeah. So all back right, to
yeah. So the recording of the baby.
Yeah, the recording. Yeah.
So, Washington State, Oh my God, I'm so bad with years. 2014, I believe. We went to the Brown property in Washington State. I was still on Sasquatch Chronicles. And, Sarah and John Brown, they, with members of actually the Olympic Project, captured the quote unquote linebacker on the ridge thermal. That is the one that looks like if you take Jay Cutler and you shaved his head and you just took him from like pardon me, but the nipples up. Okay. So his pecs and his massive traps and his shoulders and his head on a thermal. That's what it looked like. Anyhow, we can put that in the show notes for you folks. Go to somewhereintheskies.com.
Be on the lookout for that.
Sorry, inside joke. So we're out of the Brown property and it must have probably been John or Sarah in relation to Derek's story, to be honest with you. So that's why it ties in so well. Mm-hmm. But we're like, okay, well, because now you don't have to tape your son. Now you just get on YouTube and you play a baby cry. And we did that. So we're playing the baby crying, and it had been a while. And Derek's right. It sucks to listen to something like that. And it wasn't like we had it on big speakers or anything. And backstory. Brown property, very active. Sarah and her husband had numerous sightings of Sasquatch in and around this area. Their property looked out on a valley. Yes, there are other people around, but not 8 foot tall, 800-pound ones. So they believe they're experiencing Sasquatch. So we go out there and we're playing the baby cry. And I'd have to go back to my notes because I hate misspeaking about times and stuff because I understand that people are very, they'll get you on that, and they should. It could have been playing anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, guys. I don't know. I'd have to go back to my notes, but this just came in too perfectly to tie it in Derek's story, and I haven't told it in a while. We're playing the baby cry, and sure as shit, we get whoop, whoop, whoop.
Oh.
3 in a row. And whoops are something you got to have some lips to do. So whoop, whoop, whoop. 3 in a row, always. And it would wait a few minutes and do it again. I'm like, oh shit, is this really going down? And it was. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Just like that. And at one point it stopped, and then it moved from, I would say, our 2 o'clock position back to probably, I don't know, maybe a 5 o'clock position. Mm-hmm. So we felt like it was flanking. Something's going on here. Again, like Derek says, might be stressing it out. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And it sounded, even Wes agreed, sounded very, very sing-song, which was interesting. So again, not trying to assume it was a female Sasquatch or anything that would care about a baby cry, but it sounded sing-song. And I'm not even going to, I don't sing. I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to try to
come on.
Perfectly. But yeah, it was the 3 whoops, but it was very sing-song, almost, pretty, like, like a lady, like some kind of a lady Sasquattle might do. And so that's interesting and of note. Of course, we cannot see it, so I cannot say it was a Sasquatch for sure. I will never, ever say that because I didn't see it. Mm-hmm. But it's playing, it's whooping. And finally, the phone dies. It had been playing for, I don't know, an hour, maybe less total, and the phone dies. And the second the phone dies, the whoops completely stop. We don't hear crashing. We don't hear footsteps. We hear no more whoops. Nothing. And as far as we could tell, it was only the one, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just my quick tie into that. But that's my firsthand experience with playing a baby cry, a very annoying sound, and quote unquote calling something in.
Yeah, there's got to be something to it.
It sounded big. And I've said that before about the whistle in Salt Fork. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain, and even if you had it on a recording, it wouldn't come across this way, ever. So never. You guys that are like, oh, where's the recording? Well, even if I had it, even if Wes and I had that, it wouldn't come across. I'm sorry. It wouldn't even translate. And it was raining. It was Washington State, so
yeah.
It was raining. We didn't have a lot of that stuff out.
Right. And it's the same with, videos. People always say that, it was cylindrical, it was, self-illuminating. I could see, like, machinery on the craft, and then you look at the video and it's just a white dot in the sky. It's like, that's why video evidence and audio, like, it's good when you have it, but you can't base everything off of that. The witness testimony, when you then put that with the video and audio, that's when you get, like, the full story,
Man, there's nothing more annoying than night video of UFO.
I know.
I'm sorry, but it could literally be anything. I mean, did you see that recent video from here? Me and Sam were going back and forth about it. It was very bright and it looks like it's pulsating. But the problem is, in the very beginning of the video, when you look at the ground, even the street lights and all the house lights and everything of Vegas is strobing and flashing exactly the same, because it's just the frame rate and the way that his phone or whatever he was shooting it on picked it up.
Yeah.
And look up BC 135s. And Las Vegas Metro just got, I mean, we're talking like an $8 million aircraft, EC1. It's not a 135. It's another tail number for that. But they have two lights on their tails, one right over the rear rotor blade and one on the actual, the tail that runs from the body to the rotor. And it's a helicopter, guys. Like, I mean, we got to have some critical thinking here. Like, it's, it's a cool video and everything, but I mean, geez.
It's always gonna pale in comparison to the actual testimony of the witness, in my opinion. So,
absolutely.
Lot, Shen, you know a lot about aircraft. What the hell? Where you been hiding all this time? You're talking rotors and lights and all this shit, and I'm over here like, planes got wings.
No, I just, it's just frustrating, because especially video like that, I'll have to send it to you so you can see it. It's just, it wasn't like a Tic Tac video where it's doing insane maneuvers, 90 degrees and makes a stop and then does a loop-de-loop. Like, I'm so cynical
when it comes to videos now, and I shouldn't be. Like, I need to be open-minded and patient, but anytime a witness sends me a video, like, I automatically say, it's a drone. It's a plane. Right. It's a drone. It's a plane. Plane. Drone. That's a drone. That's a drone. That's a drone. That's a drone. Oh, look, a drone. And I shouldn't do that.
Another drone.
Because,
Amazon drone.
You know what? I wasn't there, and I always tell people this, and that's why I never judge a witness, is I wasn't there when this event happened. So I got to get better at that. I'm airing my grievances live here on Somewhere in the Skies. If I've ever, like, discounted a video you've sent me outright, I apologize. I'm just, when you see a million of these videos a day, and most of them are hoaxed or clearly misidentified, like, it's hard. It's hard to stay passionate about it sometimes. But then you get that one piece of evidence or that one case where it's like, I'm back in it, baby. Let's do this.
The fire is lit again. And sometimes that's all it takes.
It is. You are so right. Like, every time I think I've heard everything, someone hits you, hits you in the head with something incredible. We're going to move on to another story in the book that I would love to cover. That I would love to cover, called...
Hey, color's good, too.
Colors are good. Taste the rainbow, baby. All right. Scarface. Oh, my God. I assume we aren't talking about the Al Pacino movie here. I'm just going to go out on a limb.
Yeah, unfortunately for these two kids, it was not Scarface and Al Pacino, because it would have been better to see even Al Pacino covered in a mountain of cocaine than what they saw that day. So,
right. Yeah. This one happened in my neck of the woods. Holy shit. Okay, so this happened in New York. I got it here.
It's like 50 miles north of New York City in Bear Mountain. And honestly, this is, again, on the no list, and I kind of hinted it during Derek's story. So we have a young man, he's around 13 years old, and he's in a summer day camp. And that means you go out in the morning and you go home, you're back home by the evening time. So they would take them to various places in and around New York State every day. And on this particular day, they are going to Bear Mountain State Park, and it is 50 miles north of New York City itself, so not very far. keep that in mind as I'm telling the story. Very impressive and terrifying and pretty messed up. So, and also this does sit along the Hudson River, which is also kind of interesting when you're talking about Bigfoot. They need food, cover, and shelter. So Bear Mountain encompasses about, I think, 5,000 acres. And okay, so they've got the chaperones, the adults, right? And then they've got the kids. And I don't have the number of kids that they had, but they all start hiking and they take a break for lunch. And Chris is his name. That is the subject of my interview. He admits we were kind of rebellious teens at the time. And another kid and myself wanted to go off and have a ciggy. So they wanted to go off and have a cigarette, and they separated. And they walked quite a ways away from the group. And they admit they kind of kept hearing something, but hey, they're in New York, in the woods. It could be literally anything. As I mentioned before, a raccoon, a squirrel, a deer, even something small sounds quite large in dry undergrowth. So it's kind of above them, but they didn't think much of it. They keep going until they find a good spot away from the groups. They won't smell the smoke for the chaperones. They light their cigarettes, and Chris says that and again, now this one is on my show, so if you want to hear it, it is available for you. He turns and he looks at his friend, and he sees an utter just mask of nothing but terror on his friend's face. And this part is just, his friend just decides to just up and run, which, hey, I cannot blame this kid.
Yeah.
Made a really good decision, as you will soon find out. The kid turns and runs, and he goes, oh, well, crap. I mean, what is this shit? So he turns, he goes, well, maybe it's a bear or something. He turns, and not 10 feet away, 10 feet, guys, 10 feet, nope. He saw what he described was a huge gray-haired man. And, this is his, his brain going, man, monster. It looks like a man, but no, that's a messed up monster. So he says it's the tallest bipedal creature he's ever seen. And it stood, now here we go. It stood 9 to 10 feet tall. So again, it is really actually pretty cool to do. I encourage everybody to do it just really quickly. Tape measure, floor to 10 feet tall. And then you're going to go, holy shit. All right. This is the part where it gets kind of almost, it'll bring up some vitriol in people, because they go, well, they're not like that. They wouldn't do that. But you have to remember that they're not like us, and they have to eat, and they do things that maybe you wouldn't maybe think that they should do, or that you'd want them to do.
Right. So
keep that in mind as I go into the next part. Chris says in its right hand, it held half of a dog by its neck. The other half is gone, and just the entrails are hanging out. I said, what kind of dog was it? He said it was like a lab type of dog. It had been dead for a little while because some of the blood was dry on it. The other side to this, the very disturbing side, is in its left hand, it held either a blanket or a garment of clothing. He could not tell which one it was. Very, very disturbing. Take that as you will. Nobody knows. We still don't know to this day. He does stand in front of it. He's in shock. He stands for a moment longer and gets a little bit more of a view of this thing. Broad, very muscular chest, 5 feet across. Again, take that tape measure. Very shocking. 5 feet across. I stand 5'6", so holy shit. 5 feet across the chest, sparsely covered in hair. Where it did have hair, it was gray, and where the hair didn't cover, the skin was more a brown color. Had very long, very thick arms, like tree trunks, he said. And he did feel like he needed to like just glance at the face. And keep in mind, he's 13 years old, so he's probably not as tall as he would be as an adult. So he was standing probably chest level, and so he had to make the effort to look up at its face. And he said when he did, for the brief second, that's all that you need. We all know that have had any experiences like this. A brief second is all you need for your brain to just soak in that information. So he said it did remind him more of a gorilla or an ape, not of the human type that we hear about. Large, round, and brown, the face with very little hair on it. Flat nose and teeth, very much not like ours. Large black eyes shaped like a human. And here's where the name comes from for the chapter, is it had 2 scars, one across its forehead and one across its cheek, which I think that the one across its cheek was quite a bit deeper, if I remember correctly. And its gray hair was actually matted in some places, like it was kind of dirty, like it hadn't hopped in the Hudson River like it should have. It had some things stuck to it, which to me, and you know this, Ryan, when you're talking to somebody, you get a sense of if they're lying or not. You just do. Even though you're not in person, you get more adept at this thing. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for people to come up with details like, well, it had sticks and mud or shit or whatever stuck to its hair, why come up with details like that and be able to tell it over and over again? I don't know. It's not impossible. I'm just saying those are things that stick out to me. And when you hear somebody with their inflection in their voice telling a story like this, you're like, holy shit, this guy really saw this. That's nope. Mm-hmm. So that's something he's standing in front of. And he goes, okay, well, my friend had it right in the onset. I'm going to get the hell out of here. So he takes off. And unfortunately for Chris, he's the last one out and doesn't know if it's following him. So he's running as fast as he can, and he does get back to camp with all the kids and the counselors, and he sees the other kid, which I never got his name. He sees him sitting there, and the counselor's like talking to him, and he can tell the kid is very upset, and he doesn't know what the kid's saying, but the kid would not make any eye contact with him. And they get in the bus to go home, and he's like, dude, like, what did we just see? And this kid refuses to talk to Chris about what just happened. And, you know, something that I remember asking him was, well, have you talked to him, you know, in these years past? He's like, he still refuses to talk about this incident. He's still in contact with him, but they do not talk about this day. And he admits that those 10 seconds changed his life. He still has nightmares, and it took him a really, really long time to go back in the woods. And just to tease, he did go back in the woods again and have another very interesting experience, which is in the book. But, you know, the big question, of course, of this story is the dog thing can shock some people, but to me, that's not that shocking.
It's
because
understandable,
yeah, like I feel like they're opportunists, just as anything would be in the woods, because it's a hard life. You're always fighting for food and shelter and water. And, you know, if you're running from people, that's a whole nother side of the story for these things, I'm sure. So if it comes across a dog, I mean, I feel horrible for the dog, of course. I love dogs, but, you know, that's one side. The other side, literally, is what it was holding in his left hand. Yeah. And that is the garment. Was it the dog's blanket? Was it a person's clothing? You know, was it a human's blanket, not the dog's blanket, out of a tent or something? I mean, you're in upstate New York, or is it up? No, that's not. Well, would that be considered upstate? See,
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
Speaking.
Anything north of New York City is definitely like upstate. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank goodness. Sometimes we're just like plowing through, and I'm like, upstate New York. People are like, that is not upstate, woman. So you have a lot of campers, right? A lot of hikers, a lot of outdoors people. I mean, God knows what this thing came across, and I don't know. I mean, we don't know what goes on out there in the woods. Do you guys really know that a Bigfoot would never eat a person? Do you know that? I mean, people, they're like aghast when if anything ever comes up like that, it's, oh God, no, they're the forest friends.
Vegetarians.
They're totally vegans. Yeah, I'm sure that they get all their protein from plant matter. You see this, The size of those things. Are you serious?
Do you have macadamia, soy, almond milk?
Do you have those pasta zero noodles that you can get at Walmart for,
How are
shirataki?
those bees treated that you put that honey in my tea? Sorry.
And we've just alienated another 20% of our listening.
I'm so sorry for you organic vegan hippies out there. I love you to death. They're probably a lot of my new age listeners, and I love you. I love you.
I mean, bless them. It's just like these things, okay, on the low end, 6 feet tall,
Ugh,
400 pounds. You really think they're eating bark and plant matter? and a couple of deer if they can catch them? Like, why wouldn't they, if they're opportunists, why wouldn't they? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's had to have happened. And, okay, maybe the bulk of them don't because they know if you kill one person, you're going to get 50 of them looking for that person.
Good point.
Bad idea.
Missing 411. Come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And David's smart for not coming out and saying, well, it's Bigfoot or it's aliens or whatever he thinks it is. He's very smart for doing that. I don't blame him for not coming out and saying what he thinks it is. Mm-hmm. But if you have, just like people, again, not trying to put human traits on a Bigfoot, there's got to be some screwed up Bigfoot out there that go against Bigfoot rules. Well, I want to see Sasquatch 101 book one of these days. Like, here's what not to do, a-hole. Don't get caught, jerk. That go out and they do these things. They'll snatch a dog or snatch a person and take those risks because they are hungry. And, depending on the time of year or the scarcity of food or whatever might be going on, we hear stories of people that think Bigfoot have the clans or family units, and some of them get banished for whatever reason. And that he goes rogue. The word is rogue, but
that's very typical for like actual animals. Is like, even if you're part of the family, like they can banish you because they feel threatened by you, even if it's like your kid. That's the animal way.
Yeah, and why wouldn't they go, well, screw it? I mean, I'm just gonna. I don't need your rules. I'm not part of the unit anyway. So here's the dog. Here, a person in a little sleeping bag probably looks like a nice little burrito. I mean, why not?
Oh, I shouldn't laugh.
It's funny.
It's how you said burrito.
I mean, burrito. I mean, the word burrito is just like, because when you think about it, you're like, oh, a little chimichanga right there. All right, I'm just gonna warm this thing up over the fire.
Oh no,
melty cheese. Oh wait, that's not cheese. Never mind. So yeah, I mean, this is another story that you're like, nope, I don't. A lot of times you've had it too. People will tell you these stories, and they get emotional, and then even though I love airing these stories, and I want to take the account down and get it out there and share to everybody, and it makes for fantastic content. When somebody gets really upset and you can hear it in their voice and they get emotional, I feel so bad. The pang of guilt just runs through me, and I know you've had that too.
Oh, totally.
I've heard them. But these are, again, life-changing events. Derek, both Derek and Chris in these stories they're still going out, which is fantastic. And I'm in touch with both of them.
Wow.
And it didn't completely warn them off of the woods, which is great because they live in very wooded areas. They're not like my next door neighbor where they're like, yeah, unless the Yucca Man comes out from Joshua Tree National Forest, I'm good.
I ain't moving. No, I get it. Yeah. Kudos to these guys. They are braver men than I am.
Yeah, braver than me too, because when I'm talking to these guys and hearing the story, I'm like, hell no. And I love hearing stories like this. We all do. But when you actually take the time to put yourself there, you're like, oh, shit, no. It's really messed up.
That's why I stick to UFOs.
Oh, yeah, because that's so much brighter. I mean.
I haven't heard of many aliens eating humans, but I'm sure it's happened. It's had to have happened.
Hey, Rilo, when's the last time we had a good, and I'm not poking fun at all. That was my joke. I'm done with the joke. I'm just a goofball. I like to make people laugh. But honestly, when's the last time we had the like the Whitley Strieber, like the
Yeah.
classic, you go up to the ship and they do these, truly effing horrible things to you. And it's either the one time, like, Travis, or you get the recurring, like Whitley, where it's this, all kinds of different activity going on over time. I mean, when's the last time we had anything like that come out?
Oh man, it's been a while. I mean, even the abduction cases I covered in my book were from like 10, 20 years ago. It's weird. It's almost like it's no longer a thing. And if anyone out there is an experiencer and these things are happening to you, I do apologize if that's offensive at all. But I personally haven't had any abduction cases come across my desk.
But why is that?
I don't know.
Why?
It really makes me wonder, like, abductions were big around when Whitley Strieber's story come out. Was this just like people now feeling compelled to come forward, or was it like a weird cultural phenomenon of the time that like
Right.
it was in the collective consciousness or the zeitgeist, and now like people are either fabricating stories, building upon stuff like Whitley Strieber or Travis Walton, or is it really happening? I don't know. But yeah, that's such a good question, and it's not asked a lot. Is why does it seem that like abductions aren't happening anymore? Have they gotten what they needed from us, or what?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
That's so interesting, because it could be just as simple as that. Because if they're that advanced, and of course that's another argument in and of itself, if they're that advanced, why do they have to keep coming down and taking that many samples? But if it was some kind of a quote unquote DNA test over X amount of years and generations and bloodlines, yeah, maybe they are done with it. But do you think that the fact that it's so big now has actually hurt people coming out and talking about it to the point where they're like, well, I mean, they're just going to say, I've read Whitley's book, or I'm just trying to be a guest on Somewhere in the Skies or Into the Fray. And it's gotten too big for its britches.
I think so. I think it's a little of a lot of different. I think there's so many variables. I think people may now think like no one's gonna believe me. Like every story's been told, or they don't want to talk about it because they just want to ignore that it ever happened. Or again, I'm gonna say it. Maybe we've just moved on in the narrative of UFOs and what they represent, and maybe people are now realizing, oh, this was a product of its time. The contactee movement of the 60s and 70s was huge. Meeting the Space Brothers and being told, like, your planet's going to shit, like, fix that shit. And then 80s and 90s, you had these creepy little gray dudes putting shit up your butt or what have you. Like doing, I know we joke.
No,
but,
it's
these were
you got to keep it a
traumatizing
little bit light.
experiences. You
Absolutely.
do. You do. And conducting very intrusive and evasive experiments on people. And now, like, we've kind of just moved on. I don't know what that says about our society or us as humans, but I feel like we're in a new age of the UFO topic, and I'm gonna be honest. I see it veering away from the creatures, the reptilians, the greys, the tall Nordics. I feel like we're moving away from these very sensational stories, and that's not to say they did not happen. And we're putting our focus more on we got some legit, like, Navy people coming forward and saying they saw stuff. Let's focus on that right now. Because it is such a complex and messy topic to begin with, UFOs, that we really have tunnel vision sometimes. And I think right now, in 2020, we are so entrenched in these Navy sightings that that's kind of where everything is leading. And all the conversations having to do with UFOs are focusing on that. But again, it doesn't stop the phenomenon from happening to people. So maybe they're just not coming forward. I can tell you right now, I have not heard of a recent abduction case in a really long time. The only one I can really think of, and I just thought about this, is a young man named Deep Prasad, who is a quantum physicist, one of the most brilliant people I've ever talked to on my show. And within the last month or so, he has come forward and said that he has had a very close encounter experience with something he can't explain. And, I mean, that's pretty astounding that someone of his stature and with his reputation would come forward with this. So that says something. Maybe it's still going on. I don't know, Shan. I honestly don't know.
I think I just started to follow him because I wanted to learn more about him.
Yeah.
But I mean, and just to say, guys, I mean, and that is kind of sad to me that it is moving out of that, because I feel like that's a huge part of it is just, hey, you're big on this too. I mean, that's your whole thing. It's the human side of it. Yeah. What did the person experience? How did it change their lives? They don't sleep anymore. It totally effed them up. If you're out there and you are experiencing something like that, I'm sure that Ryan has put this call out so many times, but there are a lot of people out there that will not laugh at you.
Yep, absolutely.
We live and breathe this stuff. So
yeah, and we crack jokes, but at the end of the day, like, we would never, ever do that to someone who came forward to us.
Oh, God, no.
No.
And most of my guests, you know, whether it's prior to the show or after the show, you know, you always try to keep it light. And actually, my very last guest, she was anonymous, not going to reveal her name, but she had a sighting of a strange creature twice within an hour on a desolate road on an early morning drive in Iowa. And she broke down and she cried while she was telling the story. And when that happens, I know that, because I've been there, I know that it's a good thing for them, but at the same time, of course, like I said before, it's a real blow to me because I feel like I'm making her dredge that up, and I feel bad for doing that. Most of the time, people tell me, and I know that you've probably had this too, Ryan, is they go, "That was cathartic. Thank you for listening to me." I haven't told that very many times. Sometimes they've not told it to almost anyone, like I said in the beginning. Yeah. But anyway, the point is, if you guys are out there with these stories, and that's why I asked Ryan, because I really wanted to know. I'm not the biggest UFO person. I do have a pretty good understanding of that stuff, and I do follow it. And I need to do more on my show. And of course, we should briefly mention the on the Trail of UFOs by Small Town Monsters that we've both been working on. But I mean, this stuff is very important to us and a lot of other people out there. So if you have an experience, call Ryan. I mean, get in touch with him. And these are the most important stories, really, of humankind. Because if this is really going on, what's more important than that? Honest to God, what is more important than whatever's out there trying to contact us, good or bad? Mm-hmm. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of damn bad out there and horrible stories, as you mentioned. But what's more important than that?
Absolutely. I always tell people there's two questions in life. Where do we go when we die? And are we alone in the universe? And while I don't think any of us will truly know the answer to the first question until it happens to us, the second question, I think we are inching ever so closer to figuring that out. Whether we'll ever know the true, honest, 100% truth about it, maybe not. But I think within our lifetime, we are getting closer to something very profound and important. And it's exciting. It's exciting to think it's on the horizon. I might be speaking out of turn and I will die and I'll never know the truth about all this like many UFO researchers before me. But hey, that's the time you live in. That's the time you were given. And just do the most with that time you have. So, yeah, I'm going to keep digging for answers. And I guess moving on a little, Shen, here to your other project, which you brought up, on the Trail of UFOs. So yes. You, after years and years of working with you remotely, I was finally able to meet you in person in my neck of the woods, New York City. And this was amazing. I can't believe it took us this long to make it happen, but it did. And I need to hear about this. You're working with Small Town Monsters. A lot of people out there know about Seth Breedlove and his work. He's been on the show a couple times. But how did this all come about, and what is this new project you're working on with them?
Yeah, so this iteration came after, of course, On the Trail of Bigfoot, which is, of course, out now. on Amazon Prime, or you can go to smalltownmonsters.com and see all of his amazing works. Of course, Mothman. You've got Terror in the Skies with the flying, pterodactyls, humanoids, whatever the hell they are. He's got Bell Witch coming out pretty soon, which is amazing. I mean, they are nonstop. Adrian and Seth Breedlove, Small Town Monsters. So we wanted to continue the On the Trail of series, and I was lucky enough to be asked to host that, to where I get to be a big part of tracking whatever we can down and interviewing the biggest names, you included, thankfully, while we were in New York, on the subject of UFOs, and really taking it back to something that we talked about with, when it comes to any sighting of anything, is taking it back to the people and taking it back to how it affected them, and not always about, of course, the size of a creature or the way that a craft acted or the maneuvers it did is so incredible. But we wanted to talk to the people. And that is something that you will hear, especially in maybe an interview with Greg Bishop that may or may not be on there. No, it will be. But yeah, we were in New York and finally got to run into you. And then we went down to, the center of it all in New York. So
Times Square, baby.
what in the world? And that, of course, it ended up in a wonderful trailer that Seth cut for us. So that was amazing. But yeah, what do you think about, shows like that? Do you feel like something like that is going to reach people? It's going to make a difference at all?
Well, what I really appreciate, I was able to see some early cuts of the first couple episodes of the show and the trailer as well. And you said something very important in the trailer, and that's that the UFO topic has become very politicalized in the last few years, I would say. It's all about the military and UFOs and the government and getting congressional hearings. And this stuff is awesome, don't get me wrong. But I think what you guys are doing that's much different is bringing it back down to earth, talking to the people having the experiences, and talking to the researchers who've put in decades of work to try to unravel these mysteries. So I think it's not only essential what you guys are doing, I think it is a side of the UFO topic that doesn't get discussed often, and that's the experiencers and the people researching it. So I was so honored to have been invited to be a part of it and to see a lot of other familiar faces and new faces. There were some people I'd never heard of that you guys interviewed. And again, it's just opening up that community, opening up the possibilities of other people working together and trying to find answers together instead of just, being on our own trying to figure all this stuff out. Let's talk, let's have a conversation, and let's ask some questions. So yeah, I think it's an amazing project, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in it or that you guys are doing it. I've been waiting for Seth Breedlove to tackle the UFO topic with his cinematic eye, and I'm so blown away by what I've seen already. So I can't wait for people to see it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's some pretty sexy stuff. There's some wonderful shots and editing. Yeah.
Well, and not only the UFO topic, it shows America in such a beautiful light, and how diverse our country is in terms of people and just our environments. Within weeks, you guys were in New York City, and then you were across the country in the hills of California, or the Berkshires in Massachusetts or New Hampshire.
Yes.
It's so amazing to see these locations and then to hear these incredible UFO stories that have happened there. It's awesome.
We killed a beautiful Ford Expedition Max on the way to New Hampshire. And then we had to transfer to a Chevy Suburban, which we were all very upset about.
Oh, no.
Sorry to
Rest
all
in
you
peace.
Chevy Suburban owners, but if you could get into a Ford Expedition Max, which if you guys want to, sponsor any of us, that would be fantastic, by the way. No, when we killed that car and we had to transfer it, we were all literally crying as we were taking our stuff out of there. Not sure what happened there, but That was a lovely vehicle. So, the fixer repair daily, I guess, kind of lived up to its name. Just
Yeah.
kidding, kind of, sort of, because it
Kind of,
died
sort of,
on us.
maybe.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but that trip where we saw you was where we tackled a lot of miles and we talked to a lot of people, which was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I got to meet you and Micah Hanks in the same trip, so it was wonderful.
That's crazy. And I do have to mention I brought you guys to a pizza joint in Manhattan, and we had the sassiest Italian person in the whole city. I'm so happy that you guys got to experience the true New
It was
York for that
authentic
one.
as hell. Like if you didn't know your shit, and you better know what you want to order right the second that she comes over. In fact, you better know it 20 minutes before she comes over,
Yeah.
because if you're not ready, she will whip out a machete and take off your head.
Oh my God, yeah. And God forbid
It
you
was
like
amazing.
ask a question out of turn there. She's like,
Oh,
"No, you want this. You want this."
oh, you want a fork? You stick your face in that pizza and eat it now.
I don't know. I think she had it for Seth. I think she had stars in her eyes when she laid eyes on
He's,
him.
I think he saved us actually. Because
Yeah.
like once he started to talk to her, I don't know what it was. She kind of toned down a little bit because you and I were having our conversation at the other end of the table.
Yeah.
And what was she doing to that table behind us? Like, I thought she might actually kick them out of the
Oh
restaurant
my
because they were
God.
pissing her off.
She was
I'm
naming
going,
and shaming.
oh my goodness. I was like, is she about to drop like some F-bombs and stuff right now? I love her.
She was
She was
amazing. Yeah.
authentic.
She if
Handle it
anything,
business.
she gave you the true New York experience. So I'm glad you
You,
guys got to see that. But
I was happy.
I do want to know, like, on your travels with the show, without like giving away any like specifics, what really stuck out to you? What really sort of left an impression? Stepping into the UFO world, as it were.
Honestly, and this may sound really like a cop-out answer, but and it's no different than your show, my show, a TV show, a podcast, a whatever, a book. Everybody's the same. Everybody. If you see something that changes your life, and the details may be different, but for the most part, we as people process things a certain way, and in a roundabout way, not in every case, but the culmination is the same. And it's so nice to be able to sit with so many different people, from directors to researchers to just straight experiencers. And I don't mean just, because that's our bread and butter. Without you guys, the experiencers, we would have nothing. If you guys didn't come forward and tell these stories, we wouldn't have the data that we have, which is so important. In talking to all these people, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. We don't have an alien, in a acrylic cage waving at us like in Independence Day. We don't have that. We don't have a proof of telepathic communication, or a visit from an actual craft of like a perfect video of such a thing. But we do have is people's interpretations of it, what it has done to them, what it has done to sometimes even their children, heaven forbid. Because I'd be like, I will cut a gray if you mess with my kid, that kind of a thing. It's the everyday of these people's lives is what is so important. And I think for me, and again, that's something that's come up in the interviews that we did for On the Trail UFOs, is that, man, you got to take it back to the people and what it's done to them. And that's it. It's cool to talk about the craft. How fast did it go? Oh, great. It went at a 90-degree angle into the ocean. Oh, we have underground bases. There's a whole nother tangent. But that's already there.
Yeah.
What's important is what it does to the people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think more and more people are realizing, like, the more we talk about it and share our stories, the closer we're going to get to answers, instead of, relying on science to do it for us. Of course, that's a huge, huge part of all this. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Anyone out there in the scientific field or community, like, essential to what we're doing, but we gotta all just work together. Like, okay, let's take that Navy video, the Tic Tac video, for instance. That, whatever, 8-second video, it's cool and like, it's compelling, but we have no context for it until the pilot came forward, and then the radar operator, and then the guy on the other ship. And when we started hearing their stories, it's now painting the picture of what we're seeing in the video. And then boom,
the impact of it.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's all about the people. And I've always said that. So I'm so happy that that's kind of what you guys were focusing on. And I think where the UFO topic is going, it's heading in a direction that's more about us than the UFOs or aliens or whatever intelligence is behind these UFOs. It's more about us. And I think that's kind of what this topic has always been. It's us looking at that mirror, looking back at us, and says more about us than it ever could them. So I'm so stoked to see the rest of the show and what it has to say to us. But have your opinions or thoughts changed at all, Shan, after this journey on the UFO topic?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I think it's opened my eyes more to the fact that there are, and I already knew this, but there are so many different types of people that you think would be kind of quiet and demure and be into this kind of thing. But you say the word UFO and oh my goodness, their eyes light up and they become a completely different person.
Mm-hmm. And it's like a switch is flipped.
Oh my gosh. But it's a beautiful thing to see. And being with Seth and the guys, I've gotten to see that a number of times. And people, it's not the easiest thing to be on camera or to even be on a podcast. Take that away. Put a camera in your face. And then, you put a lapel mic on you and go, all right, let's hear your story. It is difficult. It is so terrifying. Mm-hmm. And at first, it's very hard for people. But you could see them kind of melt into their story. And I think it's once they got to finally really get into the minutia of the details and everything of their story that they released the tension and they're finally in that moment again. Because I know, probably just like you, every time I tell my shadow person story, I can see it and I'm right there. And because it happened. I mean, people can hem and haw they want about making shit up, but it happened. So that was really so cool to see, I think, is people going from the stressful situation of, and not that we have a big crew, it's a very small crew, but there are sometimes some light setups and maybe even I'm holding a light. There's been some behind the scenes of, various people in various places and just making shit work for a shot. And it's not a comfortable situation, but once they get going, I think that was one of the coolest things to see is people, you're going, yeah, that definitely happened to them.
Yeah. And then you make friends. Like, it's so cool.
Oh, it's awesome.
Like, things bring us together.
Lifelong stuff.
Yeah. Well, with these topics, like, there's an intimacy involved with, like, confiding in someone with these stories. So I do often feel that some of my closest friends that I've ever made were within the UFO community or the paranormal community at large, because you are sharing things that are so out of the ordinary and so, like, beyond the fray that it's not like you could just tell anyone these things, So I gotta ask you, Shan, when and where will we be able to see On the Trail of UFOs?
Yeah, so On the Trail of UFOs will come out probably sometime, possibly April, May of this year, 2020. But keep your eye out on social media for the exact release date. I know that we are doing a Kickstarter event, a live event, Facebook, I believe, on February 6th. So keep your eye out for that. And that way, you guys can pledge on various levels, just like you do on Ryan's Patreon for added bonuses, T-shirts, stickers, original artworks by some of the people that Seth got commissioned for the project.
Yeah, Seth, his like packages for supporters are so awesome. So I definitely suggest
Yeah,
people go fund this guy's work. He has built this company from the ground up, and you go on Amazon Prime, and three out of the 10 like top sellers are always one of his movies on Amazon Prime. So check them all out. Be sure to check out On the Trail of UFOs. But bringing it back to Beyond the Fray, there's some other really exciting news about this. Could you maybe tell us a little about what you've done with Beyond the Fray and what might be coming next with it?
absolutely. So besides getting Beyond the Fray Bigfoot out, we have also created Beyond the Fray Publishing. So what Jeff and I have done is create a publishing house, but this house will live pretty much under the umbrella that Into the Fray lives. So that is paranormal, UFOs, true crime, cryptid stuff. But the caveat, though, unlike our books for Beyond the Fray specifically, yours that you send in to Beyond the Fray Publishing can be fiction or nonfiction. So you can, if you would like, if you have something done that you want to send us, it's info@beyondthefraypublishing.com. Jeff is he's amazing at doing this stuff. He knows everything there is to know. And I'm here to help it along. I mean, we have a built-in promotion for your book of course, on the show. And we have all the means to get your book published and get it done. And so also, besides Beyond the Fray Publishing, which you can visit us at beyondthefraypublishing.com for more information on getting your book published, you can also now, and this is a world premiere on Somewhere in the Skies, but our next book, Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation, is actually available right now for pre-order on Amazon. And we have a release date of April 28th of this year for that to come out. So paramalgamation is actually a word that I came up with myself.
I love it. I was going to say, why do I not know what this is? Am I that dumb?
You're like, did you just have a stroke? Yeah, so paramalgamation I came up with it for one of my episodes because I pride myself on coming up with halfway decent episode titles. It's difficult to come up with that if it's not apparent, and that and the images, we've talked about that. But this episode, I'm like, I have no clue what to title this damn thing because it was all over the place, crazy stories, scary stories, and I came up with the word paramalgamation. Paramalgamation, it's if you really think about it, it's not too difficult, but paranormal and amalgamation. And amalgamation just means a whole smattering of different things all smashed together. So this book it's some of my very favorite, amazing, creepy, scary, life-changing stories from Into the Fray. And again, not fictionalized in any way. We take what the witness says and we put it in a very lovely little package to make it highly readable. And so that's what Beyond the Fray Paramalgamation is. It's some of my favorites all smashed into this lovely book. And we are working on that right now. And so you guys can go on Amazon right now, get it pre-ordered. It'll be out end of April. And I mean, the good thing about the books is it doesn't always have to be within the parameters of Into the Fray. So if anyone's out there like, well, I don't want to come on, your show, but I'd love to be in your book. And I'm sure you would feel like this too, Ryan, for future editions. But if anybody wants to, reach out and go, hey, I don't want to be on the air, but I'd love to be part of your book. Great. That's cool. I mean, part of Beyond the Fray Bigfoot was built upon that. So there we go. That is one of the biggest releases in the last little bit here is the second book is already ready to come out.
Wow. Waste no time at Beyond the Fray Publishing. I love that.
Try not to.
Gotta keep that ball in the air.
Yeah, man. When it's hot, you gotta strike.
Hey, you tell me when you get the UFOs, and I have got a mountain of stories for you.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you know that and like I said before, it's not a place that I live heavily is UFOs, but obviously I would love to do a UFO version. So,
well, there you go, guys. If anyone who was on any Witness Accounts episode of Somewhere in the Skies, please reach out to Shannon. If you're willing to share it on my show in front of, listening ears, I'm sure you're willing to do it in print too. So please reach out.
Thanks, Rilo.
That's my public service announcement. Shannon, this has been amazing. As per usual, we went off on many tangents, which I love. That's what we do best. Some of that is going to end up in the Patreon episode. So for those of you who aren't members, please check it out at patreon.com/somewhereskies. You're going to hear some exclusive stuff between Shannon and I that I just don't think I'm willing to share on the main feed. And that's how you do it, guys. That's what you do.
Nor should you.
Nor should you. But
no.
This was amazing, Shannon. I can't wait to dig through the rest of the book. 2 of the stories literally really shook me to the core, so I can't even imagine where the book is going next. But
no, wait, you don't want me to come out there with you and Jane and take you guys up about 50 miles upstate New York City and see what happens?
No, it's hard enough to get us out of Queens. So good luck with that.
Go camping and turn into little human burritos?
Right. I was in Portland 2 weeks ago, and trust me, I was looking everywhere for Bigfoot.
Whoa, you were in Portland?
I was
That's
in
awesome.
Portland, yeah. Visiting some friends and doing a little cryptid hunting myself, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, someday I will see a Bigfoot. That is my dream and my hope now. I've done UFOs. I've seen a ghost, or I should say felt a ghost. A story for another time as well. But I think I got to mark off cryptid next, so we'll see what happens with that.
Just bring your adult diapers.
And apparently your crying baby recordings. I don't know.
That will age you, for sure.
Yeah.
I know firsthand.
I know you do. Shan, thank you so much again for coming on Somewhere in the Skies today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Somewhere in the Skies is produced by Third Kind Productions in association with the Entertainment One Podcast Network. To learn more, visit entertainmentonepodcast.com.